Eventually, the aroma of coffee permeated the room, encouraging me to get out of bed, this time without my usual morning skirmishes. In fact, I was rather eager to get up, even though I was enjoying myself laying there and looking at the view. Once up, I noticed a clean change of clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt hanging on the beam next to the bed. I assumed they were for me, so I put them on and laid my old clothes down on the bed. I think I only washed the ones I had been wearing twice since arriving at the cabin. I would have been extremely embarrassed if someone had shown up there with me running around in my boxers waiting for clean clothes. What would they have thought of me? I strolled up into the kitchen just as Dana finished pouring me a cup of coffee. I wondered how she heard me coming. She set the coffee on an old country table, then looked at me and said, "Come sit down and have some coffee, Jeff." I was happy that sitting next to the cup was a bottle of hazelnut creamer. I prefer the cream more than the coffee, so I often have a little coffee with my creamer. I guess Dana knew because she filled the cup only half full, leaving half the cup for creamer. Just as I sat down, she said, "By the way, young man, it's good seeing you back to your old self." What? Instead of saying anything, she stood there looking at me as if I should have known what she was talking about. I assumed I had changed somehow. So, I hurried into the bathroom to look in the mirror. I started touching my face, looking for wrinkles. I was my younger self. I was aging backward because now I looked as if I was in my mid-20s. I lost another 15 to 20 years since my stay at the cabin. I hope I don't end up becoming a 10-year-old kid or worse, an infant. Wow, was all I could say. I returned to the kitchen and sat at the old country table. Dana, is this aging going to stop? How much younger am I going to get? I don't know. You look like your normal self. So, I think you won't get any younger. I hope not, anyway. I knew she didn't know and was telling me what she thought I wanted to hear, but I guess I'll have to wait until tomorrow to see. I turned my attention to my foo-foo coffee in the kitchen itself. The old table was in a breakfast nook at the back of the kitchen. To the left of me was a Dutch door leading out to the backyard. Looking around, I remembered Dana painted the kitchen yellow and white. The kitchen cabinets were white and lined the whole outside wall from the Dutch door to the other end of the kitchen. Then, they made a 90-degree turn and stretched across the entire wall at the other end. Their countertops were made of quartz crystal, and tan subway tiles made up a backsplash between the counters and upper shelves, wrapping all the way around. An island with a hanging pan rack above it was in the center of the room. It sat 10 feet inside and to the right of the Dutch door with 4 high-back stools sitting in front. When I mentioned yellow, Dana informed me I gave her a choice to paint the kitchen any color she preferred. Okay, it was my negligence, but despite the yellow paint, it was still a magnificent country kitchen. I didn't comment again regarding her decision because when all was said and done, I was satisfied with it. What else could I say? Across from where I was sitting stood a baker's rack with 3 shelves above a butcher block base. Fresh loaves of bread with different pastries filled the shelves from top to bottom. Next to me on the table sat a beautiful multicolor glass bowl full of fruit. Both combined and saturated the nook with the smell of fresh fruit and baked goods. I turned my head toward the Dutch door opened to the backyard. I could see the top of a garden outside with bright flowers and bushes in full bloom. Dana asked, "Would you like me to make you breakfast?" "No thanks. You don't mind if I have a banana?" She gave me an odd look. "Sure. Help yourself to whatever you want." She laughed under her breath. After all, this was my home. Just then, a man wearing a white coat and cap came to the back door, leaned over, and set a basket next to it. He hollered, "Good morning, Dana." "Good morning, Pete." She walked towards the door, opened it, reached down, and came away with a basket. As she passed me, I noticed it was holding 2 quart glass bottles of milk, 3 pounds of butter, and 2 tubs of cottage cheese, which surprised me. I must have looked confused because she said as she closed the refrigerator, "You remember Pete, the milkman? Well, isn't it charming you can get milk delivered early in the morning? What will Sierra think of next?" She strolled over to the coffee pot and picked it up while looking at me, smiling. What a contrast of past and future, I thought to myself. Then I answered Dana's earlier question, paper routes, I guess. What? She said as she poured me another cup of coffee. Nothing, I was thinking out loud. As I ate the banana, I remembered when, as a kid, I had a paper route. While making my deliveries, I'd always see the milkman each morning as his route and mine overlapped. One time I stole a carton of cottage cheese out of a delivery box from one of his customers' porch. My thievery awarded me a small tub of cottage cheese mixed with pineapple. I didn't care for it, and felt terrible. Besides, it was foolish to do such a stupid thing. I never did it again. I always found a certain amount of comfort seeing the milkman in his clean, pressed white uniform, driving his little funny-looking van each morning. He was always hurrying from door to door, making his deliveries. Sometimes I tried to deliver my papers as fast as he did his products, but could never keep up with his van. Now concerned, I wondered if his uniform was the same ones used by clever men who come to cart you off when you lose your sanity. I kept an eye on the door, just in case Pete should come back with his associates. Then, I remembered the local bakeries used to do the same thing. Dana, what about the bakery? Do they deliver too? Sure, on Tuesdays and Fridays at around 5 in the morning. Dana walked over to the window above the sink and stared outside. Hey, do you want to sit outside? It's such a beautiful day. Sure, I'd love to. Once outside, I sat at a small table on the patio. The patio extended out from the house 15 feet. It was 20 feet wide. It ended at a well-kept green lawn that continued straight out from the end of it 100 feet, and 20 feet wide, the same width as the patio. To the left was a 30-foot high stone castle wall built parallel to the lawn and ended at another building with a dome top. The top of the dome glistened in the early sun and appeared to be brass. It was divided into several overlapping sections as if to fold into itself. Several 4 feet by 8 feet bay windows were set near the top of the stone wall and ran the full length, spaced 3 feet apart. Where the stone connected to the house was an archway constructed over steps leading up to the front of the property. The morning sun was coming through the arch, leaving a patch of light across the whole of the patio. While sitting at the small table, I could already feel its warmth. The rest of the yard was shaded except the dome. On the right lay the same garden I saw from the kitchen. It rolled over an embankment, 50 feet, down to a sizable outbuilding. The garden had narrow paths, or steps, every 8 feet below one another for access to different sections of the garden. The thin paths were accessible from a set of brick stairs next to the house and leading down to the outbuilding. Beyond the outbuilding, the gardener planted 2 beds of tall, colorful roses. He planted them in rows on both sides of a stone walkway leading from the front of the outbuilding to the swimming pool. The swimming pool was as long as the yard was wide. Its width was at least 30 feet, with a diving board and man-made waterfall at one end. 2 neat rows of palm trees stood before the beach, just on the other side of the pool. The ocean crept up on the other side of the beach as its water lay nearly still. Yet, small waves lapped at the sandy beach. The morning sun caused the water to reflect and sparkle like diamonds. There was a rock retaining wall spanning the whole outside of the cove with an opening in the center big enough to sail a small ship through. I did notice a small white sailboat had just passed through the opening and was sailing across the water displaying a bright orange and yellow sail. It looked like a piece of hard Christmas candy skipping across the water. It leaned, then stood upright as it captured the wind. I was engaged by it as it crossed the water. Ultimately, it drew my attention to the other side of the bay where I observed several mansions, provided the palms did not block the view. As I sat there drifting off into Wonderland, Dana brought out more coffee and creamer with a plate of donuts, which I was grateful. Thank you. Before long, Jack arrived and sat across from me. Dana brought him a cup of coffee while he treated himself to a donut. I thought about reaching out to take back the maple bar he picked up to eat as it was the only one. He looked at my cup of coffee and said, "How can you drink such foo-foo syrup? What business is that of yours? I like flavored coffee. It's much better than black. I can't drink it black. It's too bitter for me, and the creamer tempers the bitterness." I was amused at how normal it felt for both of us to be quarreling. There was a pause, and then I looked at him as I wasn't going to let him get away with harassing me. So, I let him know I was not happy that he took the only maple bar. Did you have to take the only maple bar? If you know me, you should know maple bars are my favorite donut, and you took the only one. Oh, I'm sorry, dude. Where did you sleep last night? On the hard floor. I was getting ready to respond when Dana stepped out the door. Boys, settle down. Jack quit picking on Jeff. Jeff, I can get you another maple bar if you want one. Don't bother Dana. I wasn't starving. It was just the point of the whole thing. Jack is being inconsiderate. Jack laughed at me and stuck his hand out towards me with a half-eaten donut. I shook my head and took a drink of my foo-foo coffee. We both stopped and laughed at each other. When he finished my maple bar, he asked, "Do you want to freshen up, perhaps shower and comb your hair? When you're done, we can walk into town." I had just changed. After a pause, I said, "All right, let's go to town." I cleaned up and met Jack at the front door as we started our walk towards town. The actual town of Somnolent was 5 miles away, along an old wide stone road bordering the end of the bay. The road was brick and cobblestone with several fountains constructed along the way, each one surrounded by park benches sitting on small neat, well-kept grassy areas. We passed young couples who paid no attention to us, young lovers making use of the soft grass to gaze out into the ocean. Personally, I thought it was too early for such young people to be out. I guess when you are in love, you're apt to do many strange and inconvenient things. Time and place become irrelevant. On the other side of the path, opposite the bay, was a dense forest with a variety of colorful wildflowers in front, neatly lined along the road and slightly swaying in the breeze. I was intrigued by how manicured they appeared. Apparently, the city maintained them, although I thought it was too much gardening for public works, but they did a good job. The flowers brought my dream to mind, and I wondered if there was a golden city at the end of the road. While observing the flowers and the forest, I could see, when the sun wasn't blinding me, a large bright blue lake with mountains in the distance through slight breaks or narrow trails between the trees. 2 miles along the path, we came across a construction site where builders were busy putting a roof on a home set on the side of the cliff and overlooking the bay. It surprised me when 2 angels stepped out from behind the home, both being over 50 feet tall. I shouted, "Awesome!" Jack said, "What?" I knew there were angels of every size, but I don't remember seeing ones so tall. Oh, okay. We see them all the time. You just don't remember. Anyway, they're spectacular, aren't they? The 2 angels were setting trusses atop the frame of the building and holding them in place. Each truss must have weighed several hundred pounds, yet they lifted them with such ease. Once set in place, carpenters nailed them down, bracing them. We stood there for a while until I got bored. I shouted hey at one of them when we left. He looked at me and waved. I waved back, and we went our way. Except for our unexpected stop, the walk passed by quickly. As we entered the small coastal town, I noticed the road extended beyond the town and down the coast. A wooden walkway and small craft shops lined the ocean side of the road. The other side was a cozy neighborhood park full of trees with playground equipment in the middle. More tourist shops lined the other side of the park. Now, I could see the beautiful lake at the corner of the park. The mountains on the other side of it wore thick dark gray cumulus clouds, raining heavily, very picturesque. Jack reminded me it rains 7 days a week in those mountains, which was how the lake maintains its water level. So, the lake itself was a freshwater lake called Blue Lake. It supplied water to the town and the surrounding areas. We continued past the park where I noticed another road going to the left, winding upward into the hills. I saw several houses planted up there, too close together for my taste. So, I assumed it was a local neighborhood. Once we were at the end of the shops, we turned into a small sculptor's art gallery. When we entered, Jack said, "Hi, Micah, how are you?" "Hi, Jack." "Hi, Jeff." "I'm fine." He reached out to shake our hands. "How have you guys been? "And what brings you to my little shop? You need artwork, maybe some glass?" Jack answered, "We're great, and no, we aren't looking for art. We're just moseying around town." Jack mentioned a fair that was taking place the next month. Then, he and Micah started a conversation concerning that fair where Micah planned to sell some of his art. Jack was the official responsible for the larger open-air markets in Sierra, and now he was conducting business. I seized the opportunity to look around the gallery. I noticed the shop was bigger on the inside than it looked from outside. Every display reminded me of a museum piece as I inspected every intricately carved work of art. Several wood and stone carvings were poised in the corners of the shop. Dozens of gorgeous clay and glass vases similar to the one on the table in my kitchen occupied several glass cases in front of the gallery. Jack and Micah turned to walk towards a doorway leading to the back of the shop. I pursued them. The back of the building was Micah's studio. It had enormous windows looking over the beach out onto the ocean. I could imagine the warm natural light entering the shop in the evening when the sun was setting. Jack and Micah were discussing the early stages of a marble statue of two natural-size horses, setting unfinished in the middle of the workshop. Scaffolding, lights, and several kinds of tools sat around it. They looked so real, I needed to look twice. Micah asked, "Would you guys like a cup of coffee or tea?" Jack answered, "We're not staying. We're just passing through, but thanks." What struck me at the moment was how I already knew Micah, although I must have acted mud or distant to him. I scarcely said 2 words to him since we entered the gallery. He kept asking questions, looking at me as if I should answer, but Jack jumped in every time. That was fine, being Jack was the expert on these things, and I was not. Finally, I commented on the horses, and he told me he was sculpting them for the market he and Jack were talking about. He sold a lot of his work at the various open-air markets around Sierra. He was a well-known and quite popular artist. I continued my investigation of other statues arranged around the workshop in different stages of development. I wanted to look at every one, typical of me, so many remarkable works of art. Micah was not the only well-known artist in Somnolent. The small seaside town comprised many such artists, painters, glassworkers, metal fabricators, and others. Thoughts were filling my head as I remember spending whole days walking from shop to shop, looking at the artwork. I was almost as enthusiastic as Jack about the artwork, almost, but not entirely. We said our goodbyes, left and stopped in a few more shops, always greeted as close friends. After our brief tour, we headed back towards home. While walking parallel to the park, I saw a van pull up and park next to the sidewalk. Kids came out from everywhere, racing towards the van. I said, "Oh, the ice cream truck." It was a lunch wagon. Each day at noon, it stopped by with free lunch for the kids, ice cream too. We strolled over to get ice cream. This was the small, wonderful, sleepy coastal town I had expected it to be. I couldn't have chosen a better place to settle. As we left the lunch truck with ice cream in hand, I noticed small creatures following the kids as they ran and played. Although there were dogs too, these were not dogs. They looked like life-size stuffed animals, and I was excited when I saw them. A little girl eating ice cream came walking in our direction. Right behind her was a walking talking Winnie the Pooh. "Oh bother," I said. She glanced at me. Pooh stared at me, smiled, and said, "Good day to you, sir." That small fellow following the little girl was an AI companion. AI came in 2 models. One model designated CAI, Companion Artificial Intelligence, or just Companion, such as Bart, Dana, and the Winnie the Pooh following the little girl around. CAI can mimic a human with all of their emotions, common sense, and understanding. It was very hard to tell KI from its human counterpart. The other model, SAI, Special Artificial Intelligence, or just Special, was designed for specific tasks. They were more restricted and only had an understanding within their profession, including whatever details they needed to perform their duties. For example, a special might be a delivery driver. No, Pete was not a special. That special could carry on an intelligent conversation where it relates to that duty. Specials have the same memory capacity as companions, but they don't have the range of knowledge, or understanding, and they don't live with the citizens. Also, unlike Bart and Dana, the small bear was a child-size companion. Often as children, citizens chose various character designs for their companion, such as that Winnie the Pooh. As the child grows, they change the form of their companion to more adult types, more like Bart and Dana. Jack and I walked back towards home. The interaction between the children and their companions fascinated me. I, again, recalled the conversation I had with Jesse the morning before I came here. Now, who's living on the fringe? Since the dawn of my conversion to Christ, I never considered heaven this normal in so many respects, yet advanced in others. I figured it would be more normal than most people will expect, but I wasn't prepared for how it turned out. Still, it seemed natural. I hoped this was heaven. Jack, is Sierra a dream? How can this be possible? No. You are here in your spirit and mind. I guess they wanted to put your brain and eyes in a jar, but I didn't want to carry you around. So, someone higher up gave you this body to use because you couldn't come here in your worldly body. There had to be a mechanism, so you could go places without killing yourself, or getting lost on a park bench next to a group of kids playing soccer. I have said this already. The entire purpose of why you're here is to help you. It's helping you help others to see the truth. I knew about your dreams before you came here, and you were on the right track. You're here because you needed encouragement and confirmation. What about the memories? Did you figure anything out? Oh, I almost forgot. I had an interesting conversation with someone important. So, what did you find out? God has given you the memories to help you with your adventure here. That doesn't tell me anything, and I already figured that out. I would like to know why they seem to be incomplete. Do you know the answer to that? Yes, I think I do. God could have given you every memory of the other Jeff, the other you. Those memories would have encompassed the past 213 years, and you would have known everything. The problem is, you would have lost all inspiration, and done everything you could to stay here. It would have turned into a big family reunion. That benefited only you. You have to go back, and when you go back, you need to be excited about Sierra, heaven. You will be given just enough memories so they won't overwhelm you, so you can function. I am already overwhelmed. I know, but not as much as you could have been. If you experienced this life without some knowledge or understanding, it would be hard to explain to anyone from the past. You will not be here long enough to gain the knowledge and experience to tell a complete story, so the memories help fill in the gaps. Selected memories are given to you to align your perspective. When you go back, your perspective will be relevant to the story. You must tell this story in light of your current time, as if you made a great discovery and are telling the world about it. Then, he asked, does that make sense? I think so. Afterward, both of us became quiet. As we walked, I couldn't think of anything else other than the companions. Since I, rather this me, didn't grow up in Sierra, I didn't have a companion as a child, nor do I remember Dana and Bart before being transplanted here. I can't remember doing too much with either, other than the occasional conversation. Although for being machines, I felt close to them, as if I'd known them all my life. I vaguely remembered when the family came over and how everyone treated them like family members. I can't even recall any of my kids' companions, which was odd. To her credit, Dana became an experienced chef and learned how to cook everything the way I like it. Not only me, but she knew how to cook meals that my kids and friends loved, the way they liked. Bart was the most gracious host. When I had company, he became quite the conversationalist and could discuss any subject with authority without being insulting. Both displayed affection towards my family and friends and were apparently more involved in my life than I had just given them credit for. I just remembered all that. I turned my thoughts to the planet Transport, where the AI beings were created. Looking at Jack, I said, I want to see the planet Transport. We can do that. Do you want to go now? Yes, I do. Immediately, Jack said, Transport. A voice came out of the air, Transport, what's your need? A 2-passenger vehicle. please. To get to transportation vehicle, one only had to say the word transport into the air. Transportation hears the word and responds Big Brother style, and then establishes communication and provides a vehicle. As with any communication between two or more entities in Sierra, one only had to say a specific word into the air. For example, if I wanted to talk with someone, I only had to say a communication, please. A voice came out of the air and asked me who I wanted to get in contact with. It could be one person or several people. I only had to say who I wanted to speak with. The term spoken into the air had to be something out of the ordinary, otherwise there might be too many false hails. I found many terms interesting. I guess someone high up determined these kinds of things. Although Jack and I are two of the highest ranking officials in Sierra, we didn't control everything. We're not dictators. We perform more like servants than anything else. Within a minute, a small transport vehicle dropped from the sky. We got in, and Jack told the vehicle where we wanted to go, and we were off.